The FCC chairman proposes reversing the net neutrality rules that his commission passed just 2 years ago. We're taking a look at that on this edition of Politicking. Welcome to Politicking. I'm Larry King. Net neutrality rules prevent internet service providers from discriminating against websites and other online services. Exactly what that policy should look like has been debated for a very long time now. 2 years ago, the Federal Communications Commission signed off on an agreement for it, but now that commission's chairman is proposing reversing the rule. Let's begin there with John McAfee, computer programmer and pioneer in the business of cybersecurity. He was a candidate for the Libertarian Party's 2016 presidential nomination. He joins us from Memphis. The Federal Communications Commission has put out a draft proposal for reversing the net neutrality rules that it passed 2 years ago. All right, John, first to get us up to date, what is net neutrality?
Well, it's a very nice sounding phrase, number one, which makes us think that we want the internet to be neutral, not favoring large customers or inhibiting small end users. But let's keep in mind that prior to the creation of net neutrality, giving the Federal Communication Commission immense power in potentially controlling the internet, that the Federal Trade Commission had that power. And the FTC has been well known to step in on behalf of the small consumer and to provide immense power in strong arming corporations to toe the line. So when net neutrality came out, there were two sides that were massively fighting. One that was buying that term and buying the fact that we needed to protect the end user, and the others that saw a very far-reaching potential for the FCC to end up controlling virtually all aspects of the internet. They wanted us to believe, Larry, that the internet is like a utility, that you turn on your water faucet and in comes water. So that you switch on your lights and in comes electricity. Yes, sir.
So FCC Chairman Pai says that eliminating the Obama-era internet regulations will restore internet freedom. Do you feel a loss of the internet freedom back in February of 2015 when the rule was passed? What do you favor the FCC putting out a draft proposal to reverse the rules passed 2 years ago?
Well, I do, Larry, and here's why. I know this is an unpopular opinion, and I'm certain you feel the reverse, and my apologies. This is not personal. But here's why. The government consistently overreaches. All governments do. I mean, pick anything. The FBI in trying to unlock a phone a year and a half ago that was used in the terrorist act, instead of asking Apple just to please unlock this, asked for a master key to unlock all phones. I mean, this is what governments do. And it's always at the expense of the individual. I thought that when the FTC was responsible for these things, we were perfectly fine. And in fact, after the FCC took over, I didn't feel any restrictions. However, what were their plans? What would happen in the future, Larry, if with the Federal Communication Commission that is responsible for our airwaves and for interpersonal communications and the internet now, terrible things. I saw terrible things on the horizon. We don't need the FCC in this. The Federal Trade Commission is designed to protect the consumer. And when the FTC was involved, I didn't see any terrible hardships that were imparted on consumers by the internet carriers.
So if the net neutrality rules are rolled back or eliminated, you'll be happy with that?
I'll be very happy, sir, because hopefully the FCC, by the way, took over from the FTC the enforcement policies. I'm hoping that they will go back to the Federal Trade Commission, where they should be.
All right,
it's the Federal Trade Commission that has the... I'm sorry?
Yeah, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, it's the Federal Trade Commission that has the obligation to protect us, not the Federal Communication Commission. Think about it, Larry. What has the FCC done? It's refused to allow me to say the F word or many other words, which in everyday conversation, you can't walk down the street without hearing someone say that. It is a restrictive organization. It is designed to protect. But what does that mean when governments protect us? It usually means that we are restricted in our own freedoms and privacies.
All right, the head of the Internet Association, a trade group, says that rolling back these rules or reducing the legal sustainability of the order will result in a worse Internet for consumers and less innovation online. What do you make of that?
Well, I can't buy that. I mean, free trade, free enterprise, and competition is what has created the Internet and has created all of our technologies. It's what's given us smartphones, even though they have their downsides. It's what's given us television and the ability for me to sit here in Memphis and talk to you in California as if we're sitting in the same room. This is what competition has created. And to remove that, which is really what the FCC is trying to do, or was trying to do, can't possibly give us a better Internet. I'm a firm believer that we as consumers, having the right to choose, if there is one carrier that is abusing us in one way or another, well then fine, I will just go somewhere else.
All right.
Because this is how. Go ahead.
No, I get it. The classification of broadband as a common carrier service led to the 2016 creation of broadband privacy rules that make it harder to collect and sell browsing information and other user data. President Trump has signed a measure overturning those regulations. What do you make of that?
Well, in that case, I disagree strongly. You know, I understand that the world now operates based on information. That information is both power and money, and there's a tragedy there. There's a tragedy. What happens if I do a Google search for shoes for some reason? If I then go to Facebook, I'm inundated by ads trying to get me to buy shoes. That frightens me. That one company will give to another company my likes, my dislikes, my habits, where I am, what I purchased yesterday, what I intend to purchase tomorrow, who my friends are. This scares me, Larry, because you can see it happening in your daily lives. Instantaneous transfer of what you are doing in one company's purvey suddenly is transferred to the rest of the world. There's something wrong with this, Larry, because this is an invasion of privacy to a very high degree. Yes, sir.
So the state of United States cybersecurity, how vulnerable are we?
We are extremely vulnerable. The news will tell us this every day. You know, everything is getting hacked. You know, our government, the Office of Personnel Management, the Homeland Security, the FBI hacked by a 15-year-old boy. I mean, please, if that's not vulnerability, then what is? And the scary thing is that no one's paying attention to it. Least of all, those elements within our government that should be paying attention to it. They seem to have this laissez-faire attitude.
Trump's cybersecurity team, people with experience in previous government administrations or the military, have a number of private sector outsiders involved. Is that a good strategy? It's kind of cross-fertilization. Is that an obstacle to cooperation or a plus?
Whoa, that's a tricky question, Larry. Here's the fundamental problem. You said politicians. What on earth do politicians know about the intricacies of cybersecurity?
Probably zero.
I mean, cybersecurity is one of the most, zero. It's one of the most complex, highly technical problems in the world today. And so politicians who have this very surface understanding of what's going on. I don't care how many advisors in the world. They could have the best advisors in the world. It's still the politician that makes the choice. And how do they make that choice? It can't be based on technology or facts. It has to be based on personality or charisma. So I think politicians ought to stay out of this mess entirely. And I think that it should be in the hands of the highly technically competent. You know, the government should go out and hire, they should go to DEF CON, which is the world's largest hacking convention in Las Vegas, and hire the cream of the crop there and sit them down and say, please, fix this, because they could.
How good
and they would.
How good are we at cybering them?
Well, quite frankly, we are good, but so are they. We're in a détente, Larry. I mean, we're good, but so are the Chinese, so are the Russians, actually, so are the Iranians. Here's the problem. To be good in nuclear weapons, it requires billions or trillions of dollars, massive forces of labor, and highly expensive centrifuges and material that is difficult to get and to maintain. But to be good in cyber weaponry, a couple of thousand kids who are good hackers can develop cyber weapons which would make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. So it's easy to do. It's cheap to do. So yes, we are good, but we are certainly no better than the Russians and the Chinese. And there are rogue hacking organizations in the world that are not state-sponsored, with thousands of members that are even better because it's their business. They are hacking people in hospitals and businesses to get ransomware. Okay, we're freezing all of your data. Do you want it back? Give us $50,000 in bitcoins. They are hacking our government agencies so that they can sell that information to somebody else. They're hacking individuals to steal your bank account, your Bitcoin wallet, your entire identity. These are the best, and this is what we really should be frightened about. You know, we talk about national security. Go ahead, sir.
There's been speculation that the recent failure of the North Korean missile test may have been caused by U.S. cyber attack. You buy that?
Yes, I do indeed. I do indeed. Yes, sir. I mean, keep in mind, years ago, the Stuxnet virus, which I believe was jointly developed by the Israelis and the Americans, was a sophisticated piece of software that infected computers all around the world, and yet only activated when it found systems in Iran that were controlling the centrifuges to create nuclear material and destroy those. That's sophistication. And that was years ago. So, yes, sir, I do believe that we did have an impact in the failure of those tests.
When we come back, we'll talk Julian Assange and the United States government's renewed interest in him and Wikileaks. And we'll be joined by one of Assange's former attorneys, a very well-known attorney. Stay right there. Welcome back to Politicking. U.S. federal prosecutors reportedly are weighing whether to bring charges against members of Wikileaks, possibly including conspiracy, theft of government property, and violating the Espionage Act. And Attorney General Jeff Sessions has declared that arresting Wikileaks founder Julian Assange is a priority of the Trump administration. We'll dive into this. We're rejoined by John McAfee, computer programmer and pioneer in the business of cybersecurity. He was a candidate for the Libertarian Party's 2016 presidential nomination. He's in Memphis. And we're now joined by famed constitutional scholar, old friend, Harvard Law School professor emeritus, Alan Dershowitz. He was formerly a legally consultant to Julian Assange's defense team. He's joining me via Skype. Alan, are you no longer involved with the Assange defense?
Well, until we heard this announcement from the Justice Department, we didn't think there was anything left to defend. The matter is now years old, and there had been no active investigation as far as we knew. Going after Assange is exactly the same as going after the New York Times or the Washington Post. Assange is a publisher. Material is sent to him, and he publishes it. He's not the thief. He's not the person who stole the material. He didn't work together in the theft of the material. It's very much like the New York Times. And if they didn't prosecute the New York Times and the Washington Post, as they appropriately didn't, they shouldn't be going after a Wikileaks or any other online or internet publisher of material that comes their way through Dropboxes or other means.
At a rally in October of last year, Donald Trump declared that he loves WikiLeaks. Mm-hmm. All right, John McAfee, what are your thoughts on what Alan just said?
Well, yeah, I'd like to take this out of the realm of politics and law for a second, and let's talk about the human aspects of this, Larry and Alan. We have two options here. Number one, you want to live in the dark, meaning that if your government is doing something that's illegal or oppressive, taking away your freedoms or your privacy, you're perfectly happy with that. And there are good reasons for accepting that. I mean, it's dangerous to know certain things, and if you know certain things, you have an obligation to take action. So in that case, then both Assange and Snowden and others, and anybody who wants to break the law in order to inform you of illegal activities, well, then those people are criminals. If, however, there are those of you who are listening to this program who want to live in truth and the light, then how are you going to know the truth? Governments create laws to protect their own power. And secrecy is the greatest of all of their powers. So how will you ever know the truth? How will you ever reach the light if people like Edward Snowden and Julian Assange don't risk their freedoms and their safety to tell you what's happening?
But there's an enormous difference
that we're in.
So you two are in agreement, right? I mean,
no, we don't agree. We don't agree.
Yeah, I'm in absolute agreement, sir.
No, we fundamentally disagree about Snowden and making a comparison or an analogy between Snowden and Assange. Snowden engaged in civil disobedience. He engaged in a crime. He stole material. He broke the law. He broke his promise. He ran away to Russia. He brought his computer with him. Reasonable people could agree or disagree as to whether what he did was on balance good or bad, but what he did was criminal. Whereas what Assange did is merely publish material that was provided to him in much the same way the New York Times published the Pentagon Papers, the Washington Post published the Pentagon Papers. It is a fundamental mistake to conflate Assange with the people who did the stealing, whether it be Manning or Snowden. Those people engaged in civil disobedience broke the law. The people who published the material did not break the law. They're protected by the Constitution. So there's an enormous difference.
All right. I agree with you, sir, and my apologies for lumping Assange into that group. But my point is the following, that governments will make laws out of thin air in order to protect their own interest and their own power and their own secrecies. And I promise you, sir, they will manage to pull something out of the air to pin on Julian Assange.
And we will pull something out of the air to defend him, and we will win the case. That's why we have an adversarial system where lawyers are entitled to stand up against the government and make the government prove their case and take the case as high as we have to take it to the Supreme Court to make sure the Constitution prevails over governmental interests. Because I agree with you, the government will try to prosecute everybody. Look, everybody likes leaks when they help them. Everybody hates leaks when they hurt them.
Alan, why is he still hiding? Why is he still hiding in the embassy in London?
Because he's afraid that if he's offered, by the way, to be deposed. He's offered to have video conferencing, but he's afraid that if he goes to Sweden to stand charges against these sexual assault matters that he claims to be innocent of, that he would be extradited to the United States, where he would face a very wrathful Justice Department that would lock him up immediately, and a trial would take probably a year. So he'd be put in confinement. That's his judgment, his choice. The question is also about Snowden. If he had actually come back and faced the consequences in the United States, I think he'd have a lot more support from people as a civil disobedient rather than somebody who ran away. Remember, Martin Luther King put his arms out and said, hey, arrest me. I'm prepared to go to jail for what I did. I'm prepared to defend myself in court. But he didn't run away.
CIA Director Mike Pompeo recently called Wikileaks a non-state hostile intelligence service often abetted by state actors like Russia. John, does that concern you?
Well, yeah, it concerns me that he's saying that. Absolutely. The government will make up whatever terminology. The people who watch the media will latch onto and go, oh, a non-state terrorist organization. That is utter nonsense. I'd like to say another word, but you'll bleep me out. It's utter nonsense, Larry. The issue has nothing. I'm sorry?
If it's true, it's a serious concern, but we have to find out whether it's true. I don't like the fact that Russia seems to have used WikiLeaks to try to influence the outcome of a presidential election. Now, whether WikiLeaks allowed itself to be used that way is a question that the American people are entitled to ask, and that should be investigated. It wouldn't be criminal conduct, but it would be conduct that would allow anybody to judge WikiLeaks differently if it in fact took sides in an election, because independent journalists are not supposed to take sides. Not that the New York Times and the Washington Post don't take sides in elections, but at least in their news reporting, they purport to be objective.
Well, Mr. Dershowitz, you just said that the Russians were using WikiLeaks to influence the election. I'm in the cybersecurity field. I have no information that took place.
Well, I say if they were, there should be investigated.
What you're doing is you're alleging that.
Very upset if I found out that WikiLeaks allowed itself to be used by the Russians in an effort to influence the election. That would be a source of great concern to me, and it should be to all Americans.
Oh, if they did.
If they did. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, but I'm saying that I find that highly unlikely.
Well, let's let the chips fall where they may. Let there be an objective investigation. I've called for an independent investigator to look into all of these things, because I don't trust Congress today to do that, because obviously Congress is in the hands of the same party that the executive branch is in the hands of.
You both are in agreement on that. Alan, in our last segment, we talked about net neutrality and the FCC's chairman efforts to lessen the government's oversight of internet carriers. Your thought on that?
Well, you know, there are so many complicated empirical issues involving net neutrality. I hear both sides. I hear people saying that the current situation helps consumers. I hear others saying that the current situation hurts consumers. Basically, you want to see the internet being freely available for everybody to use. And I don't think right now it's broken, so I don't know why the FCC is trying to fix it.
I think you agree, right, John?
To a certain extent, I do, sir, yes.
Okay, can the FCC establish enforceable rules without using Title II powers? Well, how powerful is the FCC?
Well, unfortunately, the FCC is quite powerful in our country. It's too powerful. I think that the FCC poses real dangers of being able to control and censor the content and the information that we receive. And I have always worried about the power of the FCC in the name of influencing economics and influencing quality. It can have the undesirable effect of influencing content as well, and that's what worries me the most.
Alan, this should interest you. John, you recently revealed plans to introduce what you claim will be the most hack-proof smartphone ever made. You tell us about it. I'm sure Alan will be interested. Hack-proof. Sure. Okay, sure. What is it?
Okay, well, actually, it'll be the most private phone. Well, first of all, let me tell you what's the problem with smartphones today. They rely entirely on software to protect you. Software engineers know this is nonsense, because hackers use software to hack software. Sure. You'll never have completely, tight software. So among the things that have happened is that you have little soft switches. When you power the phone off, the software tells the hardware to power off. That means a hacker can get in the middle and say, no, I'm going to pretend to turn the phone off. I'm going to make the screen go blank and turn the lights off, but I'm still going to be listening to you and watching you at night while your phone is by the bed. I'll hear everything that you say to your spouse and watch everything that you do. This is the reality we're living under. That has to change. We have to go back. And it sounds like reversing technology, but it's not. We have to go back to a hard switch that disconnects the battery, disconnects your Bluetooth, your Wi-Fi. And so that's one of the things that we have done. Until the hardware is sound, there's nothing we can do.
So what have you got?
So on top of this new part, we have that. We have a phone where if you turn your microphone off, there's no software that can turn it back on because a hard switch has disconnected the power.
Is it available?
So that no one can listen to you. It won't be available till the end of the year, Larry. But if you can wait that long, I mean, the hardware and software development takes time.
What's it going to cost?
We have now a proof of pardon. It's going to be $1,100. $1,100. That's a high price, but it's a powerful phone.
I'm your first customer. I've had two experiences where I've been in the presence of heads of government where they have both informed me that although my smartphone is completely off, I'd have to leave them outside behind lead barriers because our conversations could be overheard, even though my phone is completely off. So I'm your first customer.
Yes.
Alan, you are a legal...
Well, unfortunately, you'll have to be our few hundredth because it came out yesterday, and we have a list. But yeah, so you go to mgtci.com, sign up, and we'll send you one. I'll just let you have mine.
mgtci.com. Alan...
mgtci.com.
Which leads to this, Alan. You're a constitutional lawyer of high repute. What do you make of... How does all these kind of things, the whole iPhone, the whole secrecy, affect the law?
Well, from the time I started being a lawyer 50 years ago, developments have become so unbelievable, we couldn't have even imagined how new technology affects the law, and the law is always playing catch-up. The law never anticipates future developments, and it's always behind. And so the law constantly allows for loopholes for people to exploit for the moment these kinds of opportunities. And so I think we need in Congress committees that anticipate problems and try to solve them, at least address them even before they occur. And I think the smartphone is a perfect example of that. Wikileaks is another example. We need laws that deal with the future, not only the past.
Both of you are terrific guests. Thanks so much. John McAfee and Alan Dershowitz. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition.
Nice meeting you, Mr. Dershowitz.
Thank you.
Thanks, both of them, for joining us on this edition of Politicking. Remember, you can join the conversation on my Facebook page. Check out the Politicking blog on our homepage or tweet me at King's Things. And don't forget to use the Politicking hashtag. And that's all for this enlightening edition of Politicking.